And we're back with the Constitution line by line. We're in the First Amendment to the Constitution, having read all the way through the original Constitution. I'm Don Frazier.
I'm Paul Fabrizio.
We're both professors at McMurray University. I'm in history. He's in political science. He takes it from the political standpoint, and I try to throw any historical context I can. But, man, we're into some deep water right now. So we're in the First Amendment, and we're taking it sort of piece by piece.
Right.
And we've done the church and state, the practice of religion. We've done freedom of speech. What's next?
Congress shall make no law, and it's sort of weird, abridging the freedom of the press.
Okay. So
Don,
back in the time period, we're talking about newspapers, really, and pamphlets.
Right. Today, it extends to the internet.
What constitutes the press? What makes a journalist? Do you have to have credentials? I mean, I was trained as a journalist. My undergraduate degree was in journalism, communication,
right.
Emphasis on radio, television, and film.
Right.
And I worked at a newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
So
you were a reporter.
I was a bona fide reporter with a press pass, employee ID at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, the whole schmear. But is that the only person that can be a journalist? Do they have to be working for an organization? Can you have citizen journalists? Can you have somebody that's taking an iPhone video or something going down?
Are you expecting an answer to this question?
Well, I'm just asking you in your opinion.
The answer is there is no answer. There is not a defined definition of a journalist.
We may be journalists.
Because
we have a camera and a platform.
Exactly. In the modern era, with the internet, it's really wide open who a journalist is.
So there's a lot of protection layered on top, sprinkled down upon the citizens of this country.
Right. And with the internet, you have the ability to do verbal publishing, written publishing. Are they treated the same? What kind of freedoms, what kind of restrictions do we have?
Talk radio.
Yeah.
And get into radio stuff.
Yeah. So what are the limits? Because we have the freedom. You had the freedom as a reporter to go and report.
Sure.
Was there any restrictions on you from your organization? Did they say, don't go there, don't do that?
The only time that I had a story suppressed, I'll tell you a story, but I'll give you a story.
This is good.
So
Scandal
at the Citizen Journal. All right. There was a guy who had a log cabin that he'd reconstructed in his backyard. And all that history stuff kind of fell to my desk. I don't know why. And so I went down and talked to this guy about rebuilding this log cabin. It was a pioneer log cabin that he relocated to his backyard because everybody needs a pioneer log cabin in their backyard. As he was leveling it, he was buying fill dirt. Okay. And in this fill dirt, he discovered coffin handles.
What?
Coffin hinges and fragments of headstones.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. And so I went, where'd all that come from? He says, I don't know. I'm just mentioning it to you because I thought it was a curiosity. So I said,
more than a curiosity.
I wonder where this fill dirt came from. Well, it turns out the fill dirt came from a building site where a 7-Eleven had been built in South Arlington.
Okay.
And they had taken a bunch of the dirt from that building site and sold it as fill.
Yeah.
Great. Pretty simple stuff. Turns out that this 7-Eleven was being placed in what had been a cemetery. Not just any cemetery.
Oh, no.
It was an African-American cemetery that went all the way back to the days of slavery.
Oh, no.
As part of the Middleton Tate Johnson plantation.
Oh, no.
Yeah, oh, yeah. And supposedly all those graves had been relocated because of construction and road widening and all sorts of other things. Now, they had been relocated and then re-relocated after the relocated site had been inundated by the construction of a reservoir. Mm-hmm. So those people have been scooted around a bit. So I'm going, wow, that is nuts. But who owned the cemetery after it was deconsecrated, I guess, turned out it was a prominent citizen in the city who was a major advertiser.
Oh.
And so, I was talking to African American families, and they were talking, yeah, we don't know where Aunt Bessie disappeared to, and things like that. And I'm going, holy smokes, man, this is a huge story, but I'm just not sure what to do with it. And the publisher came in and said, I know what I do with it. You're not doing it.
And so it never got published.
Never got published
until just now.
But
okay.
I have freedom of the press.
Okay.
I didn't mention names.
Okay, you had freedom of the press. Remember, our freedoms are protections from the government.
Correct.
Congress shall make no law. Can your employer put restrictions on you?
I think absolutely they can. So that's why that was suppressed.
Yeah.
But as a citizen journalist, I can bring it up.
Yeah, as a citizen journalist, you can do that. Can somebody come after you for that?
Maybe.
And then it would go to court. You
Yeah.
know, if you want to go that far, and
Sure.
you duke it out in court.
Yeah.
So when you look at it, are there any real restrictions on us in terms of what we publish through the press, however you define the press, whatever medium you use? And the answer really is no, except for national security. So if you were working as a reporter, can you go and steal some secrets from the U.S. government and then publish them?
And then play them out through WikiLeaks.
Yeah. And the answer is you can't steal them. Okay? And yes, go ahead.
Can you publish them if somebody else stole them?
And the answer to that is yes. That was decided with the Pentagon Papers test. And you look at, for example, WikiLeaks, you look at what Edward Snowden did. He stole security secrets, and they were published. The government's quite upset about it, rightly so. But at the same time, based on the case involving the Pentagon Papers back in the 1970s, yeah, you can publish that stuff.
Wow.
Okay? But don't go stealing it. You can get in trouble for stealing that stuff. Can the government prevent you from publishing certain things? Can they declare something a top secret thing? So let's say somebody handed you some papers, and you have no desire to publish security secrets, but they look good, and they say this would be an interesting story. Then the government comes along and says that's secret.
Tries to put the Mort Main on it.
Right. And then it comes down to, well, you've got these papers, but now the government says they're secret. I better not publish them. There's consequences for that.
Sure.
There have been people who have gone to jail for taking secrets from the U.S. government and giving them out to people, WikiLeaks, for example.
Sure.
And the people who stole the secrets got in trouble. The people who published didn't.
Yeah, the journalists are given a great deal of latitude.
They are. But can you get called in and interrogated about sources that you had?
Yeah, for instance.
So let's say you're a journalist and you're interviewing somebody. They've got a secret to tell you. You publish the secret, and then the government comes after you to find out who your source was.
Yeah, you got to tell us who Deep Throat was.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have to tell them? And if you don't tell them, they're going to send you to jail. And it turns out that comes down to a state issue.
A state issue.
A state issue. There is no federal government shield law to protect you, but at the state level, some states have shield laws. Other states don't.
Really?
So it depends on the state you live in, whether you're protected.
Depends on where you're practicing.
Yeah, and if the federal government comes after you on that, that's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
And often what happens is reporters will go to jail rather than reveal their secrets.
Interesting.
Yeah, and the government can make life very difficult. They can harass you in this thing.
All of a sudden you have an IRS audit?
Yeah, well, not like that. But instead, they can come and
never happens.
They can get a subpoena to search your computer.
Yeah.
If they see anything that's secret there, they can seize your computer. They've done all that, and then you'd have to go to court to fight about that. So the government, I mean, I hate to say it, there's no other way to describe it. The government can harass you for these things. And you end up in a fight with the government over its secrets if that's what you want to choose. And there's always the ethical question. Why would you want to publish government secrets.
Yeah, correct.
Is that acceptable? And maybe there's cases where it is. The Pentagon Papers, I would argue, was an eminently acceptable thing to publish because it was talking about past behavior.
Yeah, it was
a history
after
of
the fact.
Yeah, it was a history of the Vietnam War.
And our involvement and our spiral into it.
Yeah, exactly. And that was something that I think needed to be out. The government disagreed because it embarrassed the government.
Well, sure it did.
So, let's take another thing with this. Totally forgetting the realm of secrets.
Okay.
Remember prior restraint?
Yes.
How does that apply to publishing?
If you're warning of something coming.
Well, think about a celebrity. Bad news about a celebrity. Let's take a movie star. Some negative story about them is coming out, and they want to prevent it from coming out. Can they go to court and prevent that publication? That would be prior restraint. And the answer is no.
They can't. They're just going to have to take their lumps.
They're going to have to take their lumps.
And that actually speaks to one of the tenets of libel law, that if you're a public figure, guess what? You don't really have a whole lot of protection.
Yeah.
If you're going to put yourself out there, if you're going to make a podcast about the Constitution, for instance, somebody can come take a swing at you, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it.
Well, there is. And this is actually, there's really, when you look at it, it's freedom of speech and freedom of press both. There's two big problems.
Okay.
And one of them is what we're talking about now, which is lying.
Sure.
Okay, libel, slander. Slander is speaking a lie. Libel is writing a lie.
Correct.
And the other is obscenity. We'll get to obscenity in a minute. But with libel and slander, what can you do if someone publishes or says something untruthful about you?
And what constitutes publishing?
There you go. I mean, that's an excellent point. So what can you do if someone says something about you? Okay? Do you have any protection at all? And you've already hinted at the answer. It depends on whether you're a public person or a private person.
Correct.
Okay? So if you're a public person, meaning you're out in front of people like we are with this Constitution line by line thing, well, guess what? We have to prove that it's a lie, and we have to prove that they meant to harm us. It's called malice. We have to prove malice on their part.
Makes me think about those YouTube comments I've seen.
People are out to harm us. See, President Trump really complains about libel laws.
Sure.
And he wants libel laws changed because it's so hard if you're a public person like he is to challenge some of the things that are said about him.
And there's been some pretty despicable things said about him.
Right. There's no getting around it, just like there has with name your president.
Yeah, name a president.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what can you do about that? And the answer is, as a public person, you have to prove two things. The lie, and by the way, how do you prove a lie?
Yeah, that's a little tough.
That can be very tough. And then you have to prove malice. If you're a private person, all you have to do is prove a lie. So if the National Enquirer, for example, puts a picture of you out there,
With a colander on my head.
there you go.
Saying that I'm the high priest of the spaghetti monster cult.
And you never heard of it before.
Yes.
Guess what? That's a lie, and you can sue them, and you might get
For
some money
libel.
out of them for libel. Okay? Defamation of character is another way to describe how that all goes.
Nice.
Okay? So that leads then to obscenity.
Oh, of course it does.
Yeah, of course it does. This is the other problem with speech and press. Can you restrict people from putting things out there that are obscene? And what's your answer to that?
Well, clearly not, because it's everywhere. I mean, even to advertising now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been a sliding scale over the course of my life.
Yes, very, very much. But are there things that are clearly obscene? By the way, what is obscene? What's the definition of obscene?
That's what I'm saying.
It's
I mean,
a sliding
there's
scale.
There's Dutch obscene, then there's American obscene, and British obscene, Japanese obscene.
Okay. So, again, here in the United States, what's obscene?
And who determines it?
Who determines it? And the Supreme Court, this is sort of embarrassing. Supreme Court really has never defined what is obscene. And at one point, the definition seemed to be, and this is a direct quote from Justice Potter Stewart, I know it, when I see it.
Yeah, so like my wife and I picking a cat. We'll know the one we want when we see it.
Yeah. So you know something is obscene by when you see it. Now, there was a book that came out by Woodward and Bernstein, the famous Watergate reporters,
Sure.
called The Brethren. And in it, they depicted the Supreme Court, and this goes back to the 50s, 60s, and 70s, because they had to look at the obscenity to see if it was obscene. Every Wednesday afternoon, they would have movie night or movie afternoon at the Supreme Court. They'd have beer and popcorn, and they would watch porno movies to make a determination if they're obscene or not.
Really?
Because if you don't have a definition of what it is, then therefore you're stuck with, I know it when I see it, so therefore you have to see it. So they would gather down in the basement of the Supreme Court and eat some popcorn and make all sorts of crude comments and, yes, thumbs up, that's obscene, or no, it's not.
That's not obscene. That's just bad acting.
Yeah. So the Supreme Court really, that was an embarrassing moment for the Supreme Court when that came out.
Yeah.
And they did come up with a way to determine whether something is obscene or not.
Oh, please.
And this is what we use today. And this is called community standards.
Okay.
So let's say...
Well, that goes back to the Dutch obscene versus American obscene.
Right.
Yeah.
Or in this case, it would be the Austin obscene versus Abilene obscene.
Yeah.
Is there a difference?
Keep Austin weird, keep Abilene boring.
Yeah, there you go. So let's say you go to the movies, Don. Go to a legitimate movie theater, and you see a movie, and you go, that was obscene. So you go to the police, and the police would then send an officer to the theater to watch the movie, and that officer would have in mind the community standards test that the Supreme Court has laid out, and the officer would go through the test. And I have the words right here for it, so I want to make sure I get them.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I'm on the wrong page. I apologize. Okay, number one, the material must be patently offensive.
Patently offensive.
So on the face of it, you're offended.
Yeah.
Okay, so you go, oh my God, something like that. That's number one. Number two, it must be aimed at people's prurient interests. Here's a good word for you.
Prurient.
Prurient. Prurient. You don't use that in normal language. You're a writer. You haven't used that in any of your...
No.
Okay, what we're talking about are lustful, erotic thoughts or desires.
Wow.
Okay?
Okay.
So the second thing is it must be aimed at people's prurient interest. And number three, it must be without serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value.
So all you have to do is declare it art.
There you go. And the officer would go to the movie, look at that movie, and if it checked off all three of those boxes, then he would say it's obscene. He could bring in the theater manager and say, you have violated the community standards of Abilene, Texas. You would go on trial then, and a jury of your peers or his peers
of the community and their interest
would then make a determination whether it's obscene or not. Now, the problem is it takes place in a theater, a legitimate movie theater, so almost by definition it's artistic, and therefore it's not obscene.
So is this where movie ratings came from?
They started, my understanding is well before that, but they were in different formats before we've got the current one that we use.
Okay.
So what's obscene today? What is always obscene? What would you guess?
Watching someone murdered online or in a film or something. Actual snuff movie.
Snuff movies. Yeah.
I would say that's obscene.
Yeah, if they exist. Okay.
Yeah,
I don't know if they
Well,
exist.
I mean, terrorists like to put snuff movies up on the internet.
That's true. Are they
And
obscene?
that's clearly obscene.
Are they? Prurient interests. Do they appeal to people's prurient interests?
That depends on your definition.
Lustful thoughts, lustful desires.
Well, but
erotic
what
thoughts.
about bloodlust?
Okay, it's generally accepted, and I don't know if you recall Hustler magazine and Larry Flint.
Never heard of it. Never heard of him.
Okay, there was a famous Supreme Court case involving Larry Flint.
Okay.
And Larry Flint and this actually is related to it, but he had a political perspective on obscenity, and he said that violence is obscene, not sex.
Yeah, well, that's kind of where I was going.
Right. And the Supreme Court, by using the words prurient interest, is rejecting that argument.
Really?
Yeah. And so, therefore, that bloodlust
It's fine.
doesn't qualify.
Well, we got to go
It's-
back
it's
to
not
gladiatorial
obscene.
games then.
It's not.
That's art.
It's not obscene. It's maybe wrongful in other ways. It is wrongful in other ways, but it's not obscene. Okay, so we're only talking about sex. So therefore, what is always obscene? And the answer is child pornography.
No.
Child pornography. And the Supreme Court is really, really strict. Other courts are very, very strict about that as well.
Wow.
But just about everything else, the attitude seems to be, it's okay.
Okay.
Not obscene. And if it's not obscene, that means it's protected.
It's protected. Wow.
Obscene material is not protected. Okay?
Are we done with this?
We could go on and on, but
my.
we're going to stop right here.
It's making my head hurt.
Oh, come on.
All right, so that's our line for this time.
That is our line for this time.
What's
yes,
the
and,
one coming up?
Assembly.
Okay.
Oh, that's much easier.
Yeah, much easier than this. All right, so that's it for this time. We'll see you next time when we talk about the freedom to assemble.